Hey guys, I just wanted to talk to you really quickly about framing theory. So this is a document that you actually just have a copy of here under Unit 1. It's titled Framing Theory. When you click on that, you'll get this Google Doc here. So this will help you think about this unit as far as what is it that makes people change their mind, and not just about small things, but about those big issues. So framing theory is interesting, right, because it challenges what's called rational choice theory, right? This idea that if we give everyone the same set of data, that every human will make the same really rational choice. But I think a lot of us know that that's not quite true, right? When I talk about on the very first part of our units here, and I give the overview and I say we all have bias, this is part of what I'm talking about. Is we have a lot of unconscious bias just based on something like the way that something is framed for us, right? So that the way that it's presented to us influences choices we make. And then there's something later in this document about social framing that also gives us bias whether we know it or not. All right, so if you keep scrolling down, this 1981 study is a really good example of what's called framing, right? So they gave two groups of students two sets of choices based on the exact same data, right? And each group made a completely different decision, the opposite decision, simply because of the way it was framed, right? So here's the problem, right? So if the US is preparing for an outbreak of some kind of unusual disease, it's expected to kill 600 people, right? So if we look at Program A versus Program B, Program A, if that's adopted, 200 people will be saved. Program B, there's a 1/3 probability that 600 people will be saved, right? So 1/3 that many people will be saved, all of them, but 2/3 probability that everyone will die, right? That no people will be saved, right? So you can think about which you would choose, and most of you, just like most of the people in the study, they chose A, right? They chose risk aversion, right? That if there's a 2/3 probability that everyone will die, you're gonna go with the option to save a certain number of people, especially if it's a few hundred. So that makes sense, right? Hopefully. But if we look at problem 2, so this is the exact same data set, different group of respondents. They were given the exact same disease problem, same statistics, but framed in a different way, right? So here is Program C, right? So if Program C is adopted, 400 people will die, right? So this is saying the exact same thing that Program A is saying. Right, 200 people will be saved out of the 600, basic math there. Oh, if 200 will be saved, what they didn't say was that 400 people will die. So that's the frame, right? This is how it's presented. Same information, but presented differently. Right, if Program D is adopted, 1/3 probability that no one will die, 2/3 probability that 600 people will die. Right, so most people here chose the second, right? So they chose opposite of the first group because of the way it was framed, because of the way the exact same data was framed, right? So if we think about this also, right, it goes beyond just statistics, right? You can read the George Lakoff quote about how framing is perceptual. It's basically the half full or half empty optical illusion, as he calls it. Okay? So when we make choices, right, we are often basing them on what we could call stereotypes, right? But these are social frames. That's a stereotype, is a social frame. It's the way that we think about the world, right? So if we think about, politicians like to evoke the images of the types of people who are on welfare, right? And the image that pops into your head, that's a social frame. It's based on race, it's based on class. It's also probably incorrect. More recent studies have shown that the largest percentage race-wise of people on SNAP food stamps is actually white people, right? But that's not necessarily the social frame that we have been conditioned to have in our head. Right? So when we think about word choice, when we think about influencing other people, persuading them, conscious or unconscious, here's a good example of how word choice plays into that. So these are from Hurricane Katrina, and now, unfortunately, we're probably going to see horrifying images like this from Harvey in Houston, right? But we get this young man who is wading through floodwater, says after looting a grocery store, right? Whereas these people, they're wading through water after finding food and water from a grocery store. So we can think about that word choice as a social frame of who loots and who finds, right? So looter as criminal, finder as an unfortunate victim, and obviously race is a social frame at work here, that in this social frame, whether conscious or not from this photographer, decided, oh, black people loot, white people, they're the victims they find, right? And hopefully we all understand the racially charged innuendo here. So essentially, right, communication comes with a frame, right? So this is all part of this unit, thinking about how do we help people shift and how do we shift our own views and what's the importance of that and how do we do it, because it's not easy and it's not obvious, right? So communication includes message, audience, messenger, medium, image, context, right? All of these choices come together with language to evoke frames, and these are clearly morally and conceptually of concern. And when we think about this, as well as something like statistical problems in data choices and problem sets with numbers that aren't always hard and fast based on how they're presented. So hopefully that makes sense and gives you some, and you can use any of this information as evidence in your paper for this unit too. All right, thanks guys.